You're listening to Big World Network.
Just Kill Me, Season 4, Episode 10, Trevor Tells All. Written and read by Wendy Herman. "You son of a bitch!" I screamed at Ty as he lay on the floor reeling from my right hook. His eye was already swelling. "Freya, what the hell's wrong with you?" Trevor asked, pulling my shoulders back so I couldn't attack Ty again. "What's wrong with me?" I yelled at him, wriggling to get out of his grasp. Ty slowly got up, holding his puffy eye. I was surprised that he didn't look angry. "Freya," he tried to speak, but it seemed to make his head throb. "Shut up! You don't get to talk!" I shouted. Trevor was still grasping my arms tightly. I forced myself to calm down, taking several deep breaths. When the fury began to pass, I turned back to my captor with pleading eyes. He scrutinized me for a moment and then nodded and carefully released me. I stood there for a moment, taking more deep breaths to calm my heart rate, but it wasn't working. Ty was now sitting at the table and was just looking at me. Then he lowered his head. I suddenly walked briskly to the closet we'd found the VCR in. I pulled out the ESK and popped it open. I rummaged through the contents until I found the first aid kit. Inside that was a reusable ice pack that I activated and gently put on Ty's eye. He took a deep breath of relief when the pack hit his swollen skin, and he smiled up at me so sweetly. I knew I would never love any man more than I loved him. "You okay?" I asked softly, but not quite ready to sound completely apologetic. He raised his head and met my eyes. His right eye was fat and shiny and nearly swollen shut. He tried to smile at me, but winced from the pain. "What the hell were you thinking? Both of you?" I glanced at Trevor. I suddenly felt exhausted. I closed my eyes and sat down on the floor at Ty's feet. I felt his hand on my shoulder. "Frey, I'm so sorry. We were stupid kids. Stupid is an understatement," I sighed. "You realize what this means?" Ty gave me a blank stare, and Trevor's mouth was hanging open, as if the mere action would spontaneously produce words. "It means you chose this." I leaned in closer to Ty, feeling myself get worked up again. "You chose to spend the last 20 years watching me and Trevor—" I trailed off, not feeling evil enough to finish my sentence, but Ty knew what I was saying, and he looked so sad, so vulnerable, I just couldn't blame him anymore. The Ty in front of me right here, right now, would never have done what the young Ty had. Why would I want to hang around all these years torturing myself if I trusted you so much? Ty looked up at Trevor questioningly, who continued to stare, mouth agape. If I trusted you to keep her safe, why would I want to be the third wheel for the rest of my life? We both stared at Trevor until he recovered, his mouth snapping shut. He swallowed a few times before answering. "I'm sorry. I just couldn't stand to lose my best friend." Ty and I must have looked like we weren't getting it. "It was my idea to keep you in our lives," he said to Ty. "You didn't want to be anywhere near us, but—" He hesitated, seeming to get his thoughts in order before continuing. "You were the first real friends I'd ever had, both of you. The three of us were so good together, and what you did, it was so heroic and selfless. I guess I thought I was doing something nice for you. I programmed your implant with a strong desire to stay near us, me specifically. I didn't think that it might—" Ty cut him off. "That it might be worse for me than anything even Fat Murphy could have done to us?" I raised an eyebrow at him. "South African crime lord. Tell you later," he said to appease me. "Trevor," I said, looking up at my once husband, "just tell us everything you know, everything you remember, please." Trevor stood over me, a conflicted look on his face. "Freya, I don't know too many secrets, Trevor." I shot at him, quoting one of our favorite movies. He paused, then he was smiling, a faraway look in his eyes. "September 9th, 1992. I stared up at him. "What?" "That's the day Sneakers came out. The three of us went and saw it at the theater." "How could you remember that?" Ty raised his head and answered before Trevor. That's the day you both got your first assignments for the Air Force. And the day we officially became a couple, Trevor finished, but it was no longer a happy memory. His face was full of regret. You two are like Rain Man, I commented. You don't easily forget the day the woman of your dreams becomes yours, Trevor smiled. Or the day the woman of your dreams becomes someone else's, Ty said quietly. My heart became heavy, although I hadn't done anything wrong. I turned to Trevor. Enough reminiscing, Trevor. Start talking. Trevor had a deep wrinkle between his eyes as I pulled a chair from the conference table and set it next to Ty, plopping down in it and staring at him, waiting. He took a deep breath and held it for a moment, stopping time within the room. When the clock started ticking again, he started talking. There's so much. I never thought I'd be doing this, telling you both things we lived through together. I'll try to remember, but how about you start with the timers you put on our implants? Ty was starting to perk up again, and he set the ice pack down on the table. What? I asked. Ty looked at me. Your dad told me. Our implants are ticking time bombs. We both turned to Trevor, who was wide-eyed. That's not true. I didn't do it. That was in the original orders, but I couldn't. I never did it. I just told them I did. Why would they order a timer on the implants? I asked. They wanted to kill us from the very beginning? Of course they did. Our government isn't known for wanting to keep their assassins alive when it's done with them. Ty said this devoid of emotion, then looked up at Trevor. Why should we believe you? Because I'm telling the truth. I would never, could never. You were my best friends. Save it, Trevor. Ty was becoming agitated now. Timer or no timer, we want these things out of our heads. Can you do it or not? Trevor's hesitation to answer was far from encouraging. Trevor, I goaded. I hope so. You hope so. Ty was less than impressed. Ainsley's been working on it, Ty, I offered. Ainsley? Ty directed at me before looking to Trevor again. She's been working for you this whole time? For about a year now. She's close, but there's no hurry. I promise you there are no timers. A year? Ty burst out. Why would you ask her to start working on it a year ago? We just started having the flashbacks a few months ago. His expression screamed that what we already knew was just the tip of the iceberg. I took a deep breath while we waited for Trevor to respond, silently praying he was telling the truth. You've been having flashbacks for 3 years, Freya. Rip, I don't know for sure when yours started. We were quiet for a minute. I didn't know how to react. 3 years? Was he serious? Why don't I remember? I asked, half to myself. I'm not sure, but the first time was late at night, and I would have thought you were just dreaming, but... But what? I asked. But we were having sex at the time. I felt Ty stiffen next to me, and he reached for the ice pack again. I gave Trevor the stink eye, and he shrugged innocently. Sorry. How do you know I had a flashback? What did I say? I wasn't sure I wanted a recounting of one of our sexual escapades in front of Ty, but I had to know. Now it was Trevor's turn to stiffen, and he suddenly seemed uncomfortable with the topic, although he'd brought it up. Trevor, what did I say? I insisted. He wasn't getting out of this one. You said Rip's name. During? I asked. During, afterwards, about 6 times. I glanced at Ty, and he was now grinning like a schoolboy, triumphant and giddy. Anyway, Trevor continued, eager to move on, when I realized your implant might be failing, I confided in Ainsley, and she was eager to help. Well, that explains why she helped me, Ty mumbled. What do you mean? I asked, and Trevor looked confused as well. When I was searching for information about your past, he said to me, before I realized I was wrapped up in this whole thing too, I had hit a brick wall, and Ainsley guided me in the right direction, shall we say? She even referred to Freya as my girlfriend, and that was before you were my girlfriend. Trevor chuckled. That doesn't surprise me. She was all about it when I told her we were fighting for true love. Really? I had to laugh with him. You used Princess Bride to convince her to help you? And she didn't catch on? You'd be surprised how few classic movies she's seen. Clearly, I nodded, and we both laughed again. Ty cleared his throat, and I couldn't help but think he was trying to prevent any intimate connection between Trevor and me. I put my hand on his knee and squeezed gently to reassure him he had nothing to worry about. I wanted to get back to Trevor's detailed confession, but I was still confused. So, why does my dad think you did put the countdown on our implants? And why is he so convinced that you're the bad guy? Ty added. I'm not sure, but I suspect Dunwaddle's been feeding him faulty information. Who's this Dunwater guy? That's right, Ty wasn't in that conversation. I patted his knee. Crazy senator who ordered Trevor to kill us 20 years ago. More later, I said quickly. He opened his mouth, but I beat him to the punch. Wait, he's been in touch with Dunwaddle all these years? I turned back to Trevor. No, Trevor replied. I think the senator had tabs on him, though. And Dunwaddle definitely owned the first guy your dad hired to keep you safe. The guy he told you got a better offer? I nodded. Don't tell me. I didn't like where this was going. I'm not sure, but the evidence I have so far points to tell you. I think Dunwaddle got to her right after your dad hired her, and she made a deal. He wouldn't have Lars deported back to Russia if she reported everything she learned back to him. But Lars is Swedish. When he joined the KGB, he gave up his citizenship. Technically speaking, he's a Russian. Like you? Ty asked. I'd forgotten about that. What? Trevor smiled so big it was almost cartoonish. Then he laughed. I'm not kidding. Trevor's laugh dimmed to a chuckle. Then it stopped altogether when he saw Ty's face. What are you talking about? Trevor asked, genuinely shocked at the accusation. Just then the door to the conference room swung open and we all jumped. I turned and saw my dad enter the room, a small pistol in his hand. I stood and approached him. Dad, what are you? He cut me off. I'm not going to let him hurt you anymore, Freya. I should have done this 20 years ago, but I thought I could make him remove those goddamn implants. Now I know that's impossible. He raised the gun and pointed it at Trevor's head. Dad, it's all right. Before I could finish, he pulled the trigger.
You're listening to Big World Network.